It is a continuation of the story. If you hadn't seen the previous chapter, go and watch them first to understand the story. Link in the description. The old man returned to his quarters, his thoughts preoccupied with the recent events. "I'm relieved they allowed me to treat him for now," he said to himself, "but I still can't figure out the palace lord's intentions." A hint of unease crept into his voice as he pondered the palace lord's motives. The old man's eyes narrowed, his mind racing with possibilities. Was the palace lord genuinely concerned for Chonghwa's well-being, or was there something more sinister at play? The old man's expression turned contemplative as he weighed the risks and potential consequences of treating Chonghwa in the palace lord's court. The old man's eyes widened in alarm as he saw Chong while lying on the floor. He rushed towards him, his footsteps urgent, and knelt down beside him. "Young master," he exclaimed, his voice filled with concern. Gently, he lifted Chonghwa's head and placed it on his leg. As he did, he noticed a trickle of blood coming from Chonghwa's mouth. The old man's expression turned grave, and his mind instantly jumped to the worst-case scenario. Poison, he thought, his heart sinking. He quickly examined Chonghwa's body, searching for any other signs of poisoning. The old man's face was etched with worry and fear as he tried to think of a way to save Chonghwa's life. The old man's voice was laced with a mix of concern and intrigue as he muttered to himself, "Is that what this is?" It seems the young master is quite disliked. He gently placed Chonghwa on the bed, his movements careful and precise. As he examined Chonghwa's condition, he nodded thoughtfully. "Still, there is no position that can possibly deflect the solar core," he said, more to himself than Chonghwa. "I will need to administer some medicine paste." Just a moment. The old man hurried to a nearby cabinet, rummaging through it to find the necessary ingredients. His hands moved swiftly as he prepared the medicine, his mind focused on saving Chonghwa's life. The old man's eyes widened in terror as he felt a piece of stick being inserted into his throat. He tried to struggle, but his movements were restricted. He was horrified, thinking that Chonghwa, the young master, was the one doing it. The old man's mind was filled with fear and confusion, wondering why Chonghwa would do such a thing. He tried to speak, to ask Chonghwa what he was doing, but his voice was muffled by the stick. The old man's face turned pale, and he felt a wave of panic wash over him as he realized the gravity of the situation. The old man's eyes widened in surprise as Chonghwa's voice came from beside him, calm and collected. "You were awake this whole time?" the old man asked, his tone laced with a mix of astonishment and relief. "I couldn't even sense your presence." "Impressive." Chonghwa's response was straightforward, his voice firm. "I ask the questions, you answer." The old man's expression turned thoughtful, and he nodded slowly. "Impressive. Were you always like this, or did the solar core change you?" he asked, genuine curiosity in his voice. "Ask anything. I will answer all your questions," he added, his demeanor one of respect and caution, eager to provide Chonghwa with the information he sought. Chonghwa's eyes narrowed slightly as he gazed at the old man, his thoughts racing with intrigue. "Strange," he thought to himself. "He looks almost relaxed with the situation. This man is willing to answer all my questions without any resistance. It's as if he's been waiting for this moment." Chonghwa's mind whirled with possibilities, wondering what the old man's true intentions were. Was he genuinely willing to cooperate, or was there something more beneath the surface? Chonghwa's gaze remained steady, his eyes locked onto the old man's face, searching for any hint of deception or hidden motives. Chonghwa's thoughts darkened as the truth dawned on him. This is the Solar Palace, one of the 3 divisions of the Heavenly Demon Sect. I appear to be the 4th young master of the Solar Palace, and I am 15 years old. His mind recoiled in horror as he thought about the Solar Palace Lord's attempt to boil his own son alive to create the solar elixir. He's clearly not in his right mind, Chonghwa thought, a mix of disgust and fear swirling in his chest. And then there were the assassins who had come after him. My father isn't the only one who wants me dead, he realized, a chill running down his spine. Chonghwa's eyes narrowed, his jaw clenched in determination. Looks like this life will be just as twisted as the last one, he thought, steeling himself for the challenges ahead. Chonghwa's thoughts continued to unravel the mysteries surrounding him. But thanks to that, I obtained the solar core, he thought, his mind reflecting on the events that had transpired. The liquid in that giant cauldron. What's the base of the solar elixir? He pondered the significance of the cauldron's contents and its connection to the solar core. And it seems it implanted the solar core within me, he realized, his thoughts racing with the implications. According to Manhwa, no poison can harm the solar core. Chonghua's eyes narrowed, processing the information. The protection afforded by the solar core was a welcome revelation, but also raised more questions about his newfound connection to the solar palace and the heavenly demon sect. Chonghua's thoughts took on a poetic tone as he reflected on the solar core's presence within him. I feel a slow, steady heartbeat, he thought, his mind attuned to the subtle rhythms of his newfound connection. Yes, it's vast and burning, as if the sun itself has been embedded into my chest. The imagery was vivid, and Chonghua's perception of himself had shifted. I have returned from hell with something incredible, he thought, a sense of wonder and awe mingling with his determination. The solar core's power coursed through him, and Chonghua felt a sense of rebirth, as if he had emerged from the depths of darkness with a newfound purpose. Chonghua's thoughts turned calculating as he pieced together the timeline. It's now the 22nd year of Jianshan, he thought, his mind racing with the implications. I died in the 7th year, which means the 7 calamities should still be alive. His eyes narrowed and his jaw clenched in anger. My blood boils with vengeance, he thought, the desire for revenge burning within him. But for now, he was just a 15-year-old boy, vulnerable and in need of allies. Chonghua's gaze fell upon the old man, his thoughts weighing the possibilities. I don't know yet if this man is a friend or foe, he thought, his mind cautious and guarded. The stakes were high, and Chonghua knew he had to tread carefully. The old man's eyes gleamed with an unsettling intensity as he turned towards Chonghua, a creepy smile spreading across his face. Have you decided whether I am an ally or an enemy, young master? He asked, his voice dripping with an unnerving politeness. The smile seemed to linger on his lips, making Chonghua's skin crawl. Impressive, the old man said, his tone laced with an air of sinister admiration. The atmosphere grew tense, and Chonghua's instincts screamed caution as he met the old man's gaze, unsure what lay behind those calculating eyes. Chonghua's eyes widened in shock as the old man's demeanor transformed in a killing instant. The wooden stick, which he thought had been discarded, was now grasped firmly in the old man's hand, and he moved forward with swift, deadly motion. Chonghua's mind struggled to keep up with the sudden change, his thoughts racing with confusion and alarm. Attack? He thought, his body instinctively reacting to the threat. Chonghua's eyes locked onto the old man's face, searching for answers, but all he saw was a fierce determination to strike him down. The old man's voice rose to a shout as he lunged forward, the wooden stick mere inches from Chonghua's eyes. What if you made the wrong call? The old man bellowed, his face twisted in a snarl. Chonghua's heart skipped a beat as he froze, the tip of the stick hovering precariously close to his face. Time seemed to slow down as Chonghua's instinct screamed at him to react, but his body seemed rooted to the spot, unsure how to respond to the sudden and violent outburst. The old man's eyes widened in shock as he realized Chonghua wasn't moving, standing calmly with his eyes wide open. He's not dodging. Does he think I won't strike? The old man thought, confusion and surprise etched on his face. Chonghua's calm demeanor seemed to throw the old man off guard. Correct. Chonghua replied, his voice steady. I figured you had something you wanted from me. His words hung in the air, a hint of calculation behind them, as if he had anticipated the old man's move and was waiting for him to reveal his true intentions. The old man's face broke into a wide, sinister grin as he lowered the wooden stick, his demeanor shifting from aggression to enthusiasm. Ah ha ha ha, excellent, very good, he chuckled, seeming to approve of Chonghua's calm and calculating nature. From now on, you will call me master, he declared, his eyes gleaming with an otherworldly intensity. I will teach you martial arts that harness the true power of the solar core. We will start with the strongest technique in the heavenly demon sect, Sangsabak. The old man's voice dripped with anticipation, as if unveiling a dark and powerful secret that would change Chonghua's life forever. Chonghua's eyes narrowed as he thought, Sangsabak, isn't it the legendary demonic art created by the sect's founder? His mind reeled with the implications, and he couldn't help but wonder if the old man was serious about teaching him such a powerful and forbidden technique. Is he saying he has mastered it? Chonghua thought, a mix of awe and trepidation swirling in his chest. The Sengsabak was rumored to be a technique that could grant immense power, but at a terrible cost. Chonghua's gaze locked onto the old man, searching for any sign of deception or ulterior motives. Chonghua's gaze lingered on the old man, his thoughts skeptical. It doesn't look like it at all, he thought, his eyes scanning the old man's appearance. The old man's frail physique and age seemed to contradict the idea that he had mastered the powerful Sengsabak technique. Chonghua's doubts grew, and he wondered if the old man was just a charlatan or if there was more to him than met the eye. He waited for the old man to reveal more, his mind prepared for anything. The old man's eyes seemed to bore into Chonghua's soul as he said, "That look you're thinking. I don't see fit to wield the strongest technique, right?" His voice was laced with a hint of amusement, as if he had anticipated Chonghua's doubts. In our Sengsahan lineage, martial arts are passed down from a teacher to trainee. The old man explained, his tone taking on a sense of reverence. My mission is to find a worthy disciple. I became a physician so I could save my disciples during their training, he said, his words revealing a deeper purpose behind his actions. The old man's gaze intensified, as if searching for. Chonghua's curiosity got the better of him, and he asked the old man, just how grueling is this training? How many people have actually mastered Sengsabak? The old man's expression turned somber, and he replied, as for now, no one. His words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Their bodies couldn't withstand it, the old man said, his voice low and grave. Chonghua's eyes widened slightly, his mind reeling with the risks involved. The old man's words painted a daunting picture, and Chonghua wondered if he was truly prepared to take on such a challenge. The old man's eyes gleamed with an intense light as he continued. Only the sect leader bore the solar star essence, allowing him to handle the Sengsabak's power. He paused, his gaze fixed on Chonghua. But you have the solar core, and you are still young. Once you reach adulthood, your body will be virtually reborn. The old man's voice was filled with conviction, as if he saw a potential in Chonghua that no one else did. That means you will be able to withstand even the chaos of the mushing dan, he said, his words painting a picture of immense power and potential waiting to be unleashed. Chonghua's mind struggled to keep up with the implications, his thoughts racing with the possibilities. Chonghua's thoughts turned inward, a calculating glint in his eye. Interesting, he thought. I just got back from hell, and now I get the chance to learn a legendary martial art. I will master it, and then I will show those filthy traitors the combined might of Washinderma and Sengsabak. A cold determination settled in his heart, fueled by memories of past betrayals and hardships. Chonghua's gaze snapped back to the old man, his resolve clear. Let's begin, he said, his voice firm and resolute, as if he had already made up his mind to walk the path of mastery, no matter the cost. The old man's expression turned serious, his eyes narrowing slightly. The only issue is, you are the fourth young master, he said, his voice low and cautious. Suddenly, his eyes lit up with understanding. And I guess you have 3 brothers sending assassins after you? The old man's words hung in the air, a hint of intrigue and danger lingering between them. That's right. Everyone wants a piece of you, he said, his gaze scanning the surroundings as if searching for potential threats. Except this medical hall. Just as the old man finished speaking, a faint noise echoed to the hallway, and his eyes snapped toward the sound. She'll be silent, he whispered, his finger pressed his lips, signaling Chonghua to remain quiet. The door swung open, and a figure strode in, a confident smile spreading across his face. Looks like I arrived just in time, he said, his eyes fixed on Chonghua. I finally get to see my little brother awake, he continued, his tone dripping with arrogance. Jade Chonghua, first young master of the Solar Palace. He introduced himself, his gaze lingering on Chonghua with a mixture of curiosity and disdain. The air seemed to grow heavier, as if the very presence of Jade Chonghua signaled trouble, and Chonghua's instincts warned him that this encounter would not end well. The old man's expression remained calm, but a hint of disapproval flickered in his eyes. You could have at least let us know you were coming. First young master, he said, his tone measured. Jade Chonghua's smile never wavered. I came in a rush, he replied, his voice laced with a careless air. I had to see the one causing all the commotion in the palace, he said, his gaze fixed intently on Chonghua, as if sizing him up. The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken tension, and Chonghua could sense the weight of Chonghwa's expectations and possibly even hostility. Chonghwa's smile grew wider, but Chonghwa's gaze remained piercing. Brother, why are you looking at me like I'm a stranger? Chonghwa asked, his voice laced with feigned hurt. It's me, your brother Chonghwa. Chonghwa's thoughts, however, were far less charitable. He's smiling with his mouth, but not with his eyes. He thought, his assessment of his brother's character swift and unforgiving. What a nasty bastard, he thought, his dislike for Jian palpable. So, this is my older brother, huh? Chonghwa said aloud, his tone neutral, but his words laced with subtle rejection. I don't know you, he added, his statement a clear dismissal of any familial bond or obligation. Chonghwa's brow furrowed in concern, and he turned to the old man. Has he lost his memory? He asked, his voice tinged with incredulity. He seriously doesn't recognize his own brother? The old man's expression remained calm and matter-of-fact. No, this is the first time the two of you have met, as far as I know, he replied, his words dispelling any notion of Chonghwa's memory loss. Chonghwa's eyes snapped back to Chonghwa, a mix of surprise and calculation flashing across his face. Chonghwa's smile twisted into a sinister grin. Ah, seems I made a mistake then, he said, his voice dripping with condescension. Again, who would pay attention to a worm crawling in the palace dirt? His words were laced with venom, and his gaze seemed to bore into Chonghwa, as if daring him to react. The air grew thick with tension, and the old man's eyes narrowed slightly, his attention fixed on the unfolding drama. Chonghwa's expression remained impassive, but his eyes flashed with a hint of warning, a spark of defiance in the face of Chonghwa's scorn. Chonghwa's thoughts turned inward, a wry smile playing on his lips. What a brat, he thought, his assessment of Chonghwa's character swift and dismissive. He's picking a verbal fight like a back-alley thug. Chonghwa mused, his mind flashing back to his past life. In my past life, I was a martial god of speech, he thought, a hint of nostalgia and confidence creeping into his mental voice. Trying to out-talk me? Good luck, he thought, his eyes glinting with amusement and anticipation. The verbal sparring match was on, and Chonghwa was more than ready to take on the challenge. Chonghwa's word hung in the air, a swift and precise counterattack. If anyone deserves to be called a worm, it's you, brother, he said, his tone light, yet laced with subtle venom. The old man's eyes widened in surprise, and Chonghwa's face froze, his smile faltering for a moment. The air seemed to vibrate with tension as Chonghwa's expression darkened, his eyes flashing with anger and humiliation. The verbal sparring match had just escalated, and it seemed Chonghwa had landed the first blow. Chonghwa's words flowed like a river, each phrase a precise jab. Strange, how that thought suddenly popped into my head, he said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. With that worm-like memory, how fitting is it for you to be the first young master of the Solar Palace? His eyes sparkled with amusement, as if daring Chonghwa to respond. Chonghwa's face turned red with rage, his eyes blazing with fury. What? He spluttered, his voice barely coherent. Meanwhile, the old man's lips curled into a subtle smile, his eyes gleaming with interest. It seemed he was enjoying the verbal sparring match unfolding before him. Chonghwa's hand clamped down on Chonghwa's shoulder, his grip tight and oppressive. You are just a child born a lowly woman who is nameless and insignificant, he sneered, his words dripping with venom. Is it any wonder your brother's memory is confused? His face twisted in anger, and he spat out the words, Damn you, little brother. The old man's smile had vanished, replaced by a look of disapproval, as if he sensed the situation escalating beyond control. Chonghwa's eyes narrowed, his gaze fixed on Chonghwa's hand, still resting on his shoulder, as if daring him to mail another move. Chonghwa's face remained calm, a serene mask that belied the storm brewing beneath. My name is Hiyun, he said, his voice steady and clear. The old man's eyes widened in surprise, his gaze snapping back to Chonghwa with renewed interest. Chonghwa's expression, however, darkened further. That name, isn't it the North Heaven General? He asked, his voice laced with a mix of curiosity and wariness. as if the mention of the title sparked a dangerous connection. The air seemed to thicken, heavy with unspoken implications, as Jae-chan eyes narrowed, his gaze piercing Chong while like a dagger. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you don't miss the next chapter.